Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, welcome everybody to the Think Small podcast. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring. And every once in a while, we get a guest whose story starts not in a business school classroom or a venture capital pitch deck, but on a factory floor. Today's guest started his career right out of high school running equipment at a packaging company. His employer put him through engineering school. He got his MBA. He learned how to buy and sell businesses by doing it for someone else. And then one day, he decided to do it for himself. Keith Smith is the president and CEO of Vonco Products, which is a 70-year-old contract manufacturer based in Trevor, Wisconsin, making flexible packaging and medical devices for some of the most demanding customers in the world, like Medtronic, major device OEMs, and health system supply chains across the United States. Vonco has been at this since 1955, but Keith acquired it in 2012, thinking he was going to turn it into a food packaging company. The market had other ideas. By 2016 and 2017, inbound from medical device manufacturers kept showing up, and Keith followed where the demand led. 3 acquisitions later, a 36,500 square foot facility expansion, and a proprietary FDA-cleared product later, Vonco is now a turnkey medical device contract manufacturer making as things that go into and out of the human body. Keith, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the Think Small podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Denise. What a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, and you've got a great story, so I'm excited to dig in. But before we get into some of the bigger questions, I want the audience to really understand this path where you came from, because the arc from factory floor to acquiring your own company is not a typical path. So walk us through that journey, if you will.
The way I ended up on that factory floor was simply that they paid more than the cabinet shop that I was at. So I had a good friend that was making $9 an hour. I was making $6. And so I asked for a raise. They said, we can't pay that much. So I ended up on a print floor at a packaging company and ended up staying there for 12 years and was a phenomenal company. But I learned how to print flexible packaging. And then through my endeavors, just was passionate about manufacturing in general and started to take school engineering classes and started to apply that, and just the tenacity of learning more. And slowly but surely I moved my way up, and on top of it learned more on developing products, improving processes, and just created a passion for the industry.
Tell us about the moment that you watched a sale happen, right, from one of the companies you were in, and then the moment you thought, I can do this. What was that like?
Yeah, so the first company I was with was for 12 years, and then the next company I joined was right after I finished my graduate work, and was really looking to run my own P&L. And this company was actually a paper company that had acquired plastic companies themselves under one leadership team, and then brought in a new leadership team, had different ideas, and wanted to find different ways to generate cash. So we positioned this division to sell. And so I had to be front and center for that process. And as I thought about like what's next and how things are unfolding, watching this process unfold right in front of me, is that I get it, right? This is how transactions are completed. And after the dust had settled and the exits were successful, I started an endeavor myself, a bit of moonlighting, and looking for an opportunity to do it myself.
That's great. Well, most manufacturing companies I talk to have a version of the same dream, to stop building things for other people and start owning something themselves, and you actually did it. So Interlock Flow is an FDA-cleared direct connect enteral feeding solution. We might need a little bit more explanation on what that is. Mm-hmm. It won the Flexible Packing Association's highest achievement award, and it serves more than 1 million patients a year who depend on feeding tubes. So tell us a little bit about the product and walk us through how that happened, because going from a contract manufacturer to a product company is probably one of the hardest transitions in manufacturing, and most people never make it.
Yeah. This is a fun process as well. Some really you're able to point out some really fun times in my career and ways that we can create value, for people. And this really was set out of we had always been doing fluids in and out of the body to some extent, and we had started an innovation process to take a look at the multitude of pumps and containers and processes to do this, to move fluids around patients and hospital systems. And the way that we went about it was to brainstorm. We brainstormed about 13 different um, scenarios that have these types of containers that we make, and we started to analyze those. And we quickly, just as a team of innovative folks within Vonco, started to vote it down to like, where is 5 or 6 of these things that we can focus on. So it was a quick vote on 5 or 6, and then we set up sub teams. And these sub teams went out and did some market studies, some technology explorations. Ultimately, we were looking for the white space, something that didn't exist today that could create value. And it was a fun day. Like, I remember sitting around our boardroom, and it was basically a pitch day. I think we ended up with 5 by the time we got done with it. There was 5 pitches of why we should invest capital towards this technology, and we ended up choosing enteral. And it really was because it was such a cumbersome process. Enteral is really tube feeding, and there's really 2 ways that can be done. It actually can be done through a tube that gets wired up through the nose and then down through. That's if something's wrong orally. But if you have something in the throat that doesn't allow that to happen, you're going to get a tube inserted into your belly, and you're going to feed that way. This way your body continues to process foods. The worse off patients, it's done through IV, but you start to lose that ability to process foods over time. So they want to keep you on real foods as if they can. So we end up with a fair amount of like throat cancers and mouth cancers that end up in these positions that they have to. There's many other cases, but that's the big part of what occurs in that process. And so the process, though, is usually it's in a rigid or like a milk container. The food that they would eat, they pour it into an open container, they syringe it, put the syringe in, and feed. And most of the feeds are around 1.2 calories per milliliter. And so, in order to get enough calories, right? Let's say you're not moving as much, but even if you need to get 1,500 calories, I'm just going to use simple math. You're going to need about 1.5 liters of this,
Wow.
and you might do 250 to 500 at a feeding. And so, it's quite a bit. And these syringes are usually around 60 ml. So you have to keep filling, keep pouring, keep filling, keep pouring. If you can tolerate it, you'll syringe it in to go a little faster. A lot of times it's just gravity. You lift it up or down. And we just thought there's a better way, a more sterile way. And we also saw that there were new technologies coming out to improve the safety of patients, and it's called ENFit. So that's what the spout we developed to direct connect. So now, just like a baby food pouch, you have the food in the pouch. It direct connects, so you don't have the pouring. You have the sterility that exists. The food's not exposed. So there's a lot of benefits, but we go to it's called the Aspen Show, and we have nurses and dietitians that just come up to us. It's changed our life. It's so much easier to administer. As you might imagine, if you're in the hospital, you're having a nurse and caregiver there. You may be in long-term care where there's someone taking care of you. And then even if you are mobile, this is also what's great. You don't need all these supplies. You can go on the go and live somewhat of a normal life, and be on the move. So we've seen a fair amount of adoption, over the last few years. in simplifying the feeding process for tube feeders.
That's amazing. And it's got to feel good too, because you know you're making such a difference in patients' lives.
It is, I'm not sure what if the science is perfect, but I'm a big believer that the diets that we have, the high sugar contents, the high processed foods are part of the challenge that creates some of these cancers, heart disease, these types of things. And what's the way that our system works, our reimbursement system works, is to reimburse on calories, and it's not a great reimbursement model. Like, you're not going to get rich off of that reimbursement model. So you have to drive cost out, and the cheapest way to get calories into people is high fructose corn syrup. So, what we've developed as well allows high proteins to be stored over long periods of time. So, a good shelf life, and we're putting protein into folks that we want to get healthy. You don't really want to put somebody on a high sugar diet when you're trying to battle cancer.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, food is medicine,
Yeah,
they say, right?
yeah,
If it's the right
yeah.
if it's the right content. So you've got a couple different buyers, right? On your manufacturing side, you're selling to device companies because they're buying your packaging. And then with this product line, you're selling to hospitals or clinics. Is that right?
No, again, the concept was to try to create something that allows us not to compete with the devices sell to hospital, device companies, device OEMs. We sell empty containers to the fillers, and then they fill their medical food to it, and they sell to the hospital.
I
So
see.
it's
Okay.
really the same channel. It's to support the same customers that we would normally call on.
Okay. And so how much of the revenue now is coming from the product versus kind of the packaging services that you sell?
Yeah, that's just one, but we have multiple products as well. So I would say about 25% of our product comes, or 25% of our revenues are coming from the products that we have invented, developed, or enhanced.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. Um, so between 20 and 2023, you acquired a couple of companies, McFarlane Medical, FlexPack, and Genesis Plastics Welding. Three companies in 3 years. And, you described this as a horizontal strategy, not going deeper into the manufacturing stack, but adding adjacent capabilities so that you can offer more to the same customers you already serve. So walk us through how that playbook actually works and specifically what you do in the first 90 days of an acquisition to make sure you don't lose the people and the knowledge you just paid to acquire.
hmm Yeah, good questions. Yeah, the horizontal strategy has worked well for us, and it has been very strategic, not opportunistic. Um, we start with being a customer-centric company to begin with. So we have a core group of customers that we want to get, bigger and wider with. And so when we look at what those customers are buying, the gaps in their supply chains, the challenges that they've had in buying, we're looking for ways to be part of that conversation more within these organizations. And so this developed basically a radar chart for us, and the more of like a bullseye. The bullseye's here, and here would be other things that would be nice, but it's a little bit different than what we're doing today. And then, yeah, they're buying a lot of this stuff, but it's not as tied to what we do today. So, that creates the mission of companies that we seek. And we created, again, a team with inside and outside help to try to identify organizations that would be a good fit. And what we were able to do, it wasn't as deliberate as what we wanted to buy, but what ended up working really was how we found Vonco as well, is that in many private equity scenarios, they're looking for a platform company potentially. Sometimes they put a bolt on, and it's not quite as important. But for the platform companies, they need a leadership team. And but there's no exit strategy for some owners. And that's how I found really all four, including Vonco. There was no exit strategy that they could come up with. They didn't want to stay on. They they wanted a good pathway for their people, but there certainly wasn't enough leadership there to operate, without somebody. So we became really all four of these founders' retirement strategy, and so and that was a bit coincidental, but it certainly as we've gone through this process, that's been a really strong part of our reputation in acquiring the companies. And to your point, it's going in with that reputation. It's helpful that we're not seeing too many people look at us sideways, when we show up and all head for the doors. So for sure. And it's good to have the founder on board too, right? So, when the acquisition becomes announced, we go in lockstep of, what we saw in this company, and then vice versa, what the founder saw in Vonco of, why they trusted us, right? So we're trying to build that trust and equity. Hey, you trusted this person for a long time. He trusts us, give us a shot. And that certainly has worked well for us. In key people, there's other ways to make sure we're going to solidify your key personnel. But for this is manufacturing, so there's lots of people that we'd like to keep them all and make sure we can figure out how to make 1 + 1 3.
Yeah. So that's a really smart strategy, targeting founders who are looking to exit, right? Or maybe they're retiring or they're done with their gig. For a founder who's might be listening, who's looking to do, their first acquisition, how would you go about targeting those types of individuals? Was it the PE companies you were working or investment bankers? How did they find those types of companies where that was the case?
Yeah, I think it's identifying really the demographic and psychographic of the companies you want to find. And we did outsource with it's called an investment banker firm that focused on as much on buying than selling. Many of them love the sale process. There's a percentage, and so they'll do it so that they can maybe link into your company to sell you at some time. But we really look for somebody that focused on that buy side and is willing to put the resources towards that with no commitment on my exit. And when you find somebody that's focused on that, we had a great process that, through my knowledge, through some internal team knowledge of identifying companies that fit that demographic, that psychographic, through their networks, you start putting a lead list together, and we just start going to work on trying to get them on the phone and talk about what their thoughts are and explain what Vonco's doing and why we're looking and what we think we can do together and what the vision is. And, if they're looking for an exit, it typically works out. If they're continuing to want to run on, and they're doing fine, then we just pass. So you have to treat it a bit like a sales lead list. You're not going to close every phone call, but you need to know what you're looking for. And I think that message when it comes across, I'm not just cold calling anybody. This is where like it gets a little frustrating from PE, right? They just need to deploy capital, and you hear the desperation in their voices of I got to deploy capital, with no real strategic thread. With Vonco, here's why we targeted you specifically and why I think together is better.
Yeah, that makes sense. But gosh, doing all of that due diligence for 3 companies in 3 years, that had to have been a full-time job. How do you keep your teams focused when competitors are watching, right? When there's integrations because they're waiting for you to slip up and take your eye off the ball. How do you as a leader keep your team focused with all of that going on in the background?
Yeah, I think just having a good strategic plan and strong KPIs for each department leader to manage to. So, my preference is allow my department heads to operate independently, and if they're doing their job, I can hang out in innovation and acquisition. And that's just kind of my job description.
Yeah.
Their job description is run ops, run design, run integration, run quality, run accounting.
Yeah.
There's times where, and you've seen it's been a little bit quiet from Vonco the last few years. There's times where I need to spend some time on that execution piece. But when we're hitting our stride, I'm hanging in innovation and acquisition.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you told me something in our prep call that I wanted to bring to the audience because I think it's one of the most honest things a CEO of a company your size can say, that you personally own the commercial side of the business. You are the player coach, running sales strategy, managing key customer relationships, steering a marketing agency while also being the CEO of this 120 person plus company that operates across 3 different market segments, each with its own buyer type and process. Most other founders that I talk to know that they need to eventually replace themselves in the commercial role. So what does that model actually look like when it's working, and what does it cost you personally sometimes?
No, it's a good question. Yeah, I think we're up over 220 employees, so
Oh,
it is yeah, it is a little bit bigger. For the most part, I didn't run sales for the 13 years I was here. Um, you know, I had hired 2 sales leaders and let them do their thing, and just kind of came after 10 years. I was not happy with the organic growth process, and made the decision that I was going to dive in and try to really develop this team and the processes so that I can turn it over to a manager and not a leader that needs to a transformational leader that needs to build it. So I'm coming to the end of that tenure, and it's gone well. I think we've always had pretty good people within it, and what ends up happening for sales leaders, I think it is, especially B2B, they'll come in with a good process and start working that process, and then all of a sudden, a shiny object comes into the pipeline that's, you know, this could change their world type success, and that process starts to fall to the wayside. And I just look at sales. Many times people look at sales like it's some sort of black magic, and you just either have a great salesperson or you don't, and you just need to find the right person over time. I can't believe that. I've seen so many good sales, but there's a process and there's a training to it.
right.
And so we just started down a really disciplined path, just like I would in a manufacturing operation, just like I would in an engineering process. And we're gonna put a process in place. We're gonna test it. We're gonna find ways to make it better. And we've been doing that for 3 years, and it's been enormously successful in what we've been able to close over the last 3 years. And now that the process is relatively built, it's perfect timing to start figuring out how to transition. And that's, again, you'll take a look at the timing from our last acquisition to today. I've been sitting in sales trying to get that organic strategy working such that it's going to generate enough cash so I can invent the next big thing and find the right next acquisition that can bring value to my base customers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so for a founder who's in the same position who might be listening, still the primary commercial person in their business, what would you tell them, since you've just been through this for the last several years, is the first thing they need to build before they can safely take one step back from that role?
Yeah, I would tell them to build the sales process and make sure you're comfortable with that sales process. That certainly as a founder, you've got to where you're at because you're influential, you know what you're doing. So yeah, it's going to be easier for you to sell, and there's going to be some thoughts that it's just going to be quicker for me to do it than teach somebody else. And I do think it starves the business if you spend too much time there, because there's other ways to create value out of the founder CEO desk. And so finding that process that is repeatable and then start training. I stopped for most part hiring Rolodex sales folks. I can bring you a bunch of business, and really hiring people that were hungry and wanted to learn our sales process, and then they start working their way up. And so we've seen this now ladder idea work really well because we have a well-defined process that my team can get aligned with quickly.
Well, great. Thank you for those nuggets. I think
Sure.
that's important. Um, so last question, let's talk about your career again. When you started on the factory floor, your employer put you through engineering school, you got your MBA, you learned how to sell and buy businesses, and then you bought Vonco. For a founder or business owner who's in the middle of building something right now, maybe not sure whether to follow their original plan or follow the market, what is the one thing you know now that you wish someone had told you in the beginning?
Two answers to that, but yeah, I think be open-minded to continuously learn, and so I think just being able to pivot towards med device was just pure learning. Stay curious through the process. You probably working a ton of hours already, but somehow you have to find ways to go think about your business and what's really happening. And I've been fortunate. I surround myself with other people that help me by asking good questions. And so there's my partners. I put a board together. It helps get me thinking, about the business versus, the tactical side of things. And so I think that's one. And then two, just as is managing your energy, I think that was a lesson I learned the hard way. You start to just not have enough energy to do it all. And you never know when that next big opportunity shows up, uh, and you've got stuff going on, in your life. You've got um, opportunities in business. You have problems over here. So what gets your attention first? So in order to tackle it all, you got to focus on yourself first. And for me, it's pouring into one, just knowledge, but also health. It's just making sure I've got some physical activity that gets me kind of out of my brain and more into my intuition and things like that. And yeah, I mean, if I can get a good intuitive thought by just being out of the business a bit and working on myself, working on my health, uh, yeah, I'll go back to my brain at some point and test these hypotheses. But you've got to create that space somewhere to invest in yourself and find ways to rise above some of the day-to-day challenges that really suck you in and can drain you from enjoying the other parts of life. So,
Yeah, yeah, well, that's very sage wisdom. What's the most recent thing you've been learning about?
uh, yeah, I've been working through um, really the bioprocessing and cell and gene therapy markets.
Oh, wow.
I think we've got some really good customers in these areas, and I continue to want to figure out ways to explore and create innovation to bring, it's really bringing more personalized medicine to the market at an affordable rate and finding ways to operate these systems at lower cost and provide more opportunity for people to live healthier lives.
That's great. Well, Keith, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more about you or about Vonco products?
Sure. Yeah, let's start with Vonco, www.vonco.com, V as in Victor, ONCO.com. And then I have a personal website where I'll talk a lot about cultivating infectious energy. It's keithsmith.io.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out myself. So, to our Think Small listeners, if today's conversation reminded you that your next growth chapter might come from what the market is already telling you, not the plan you wrote 3 years ago, please share this podcast with somebody who needs to hear it. We'll see you all next time, and thank you so much, Keith. This has really been an enjoyable conversation, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Thanks so much, Denise. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?